Hey guys, welcome into the Sink Truth Podcast. Mark Schlereth alongside my co-host Mike Evans. Week 12 in the books, over. And well, first off, happy Thanksgiving. I hope your Thanksgiving was great.
It was great. Did you enjoy yourself? You got a chance to be home before you had to travel out?
Absolutely. Had all the kids there, the grandkids there. It was awesome, man. It's always good to kind of, I love Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving was always a great time as a player and, now as a broadcaster to be home and not to travel out on Thursday. We pushed that back to Friday. But it was good. Yeah, it was great.
So you got a chance to watch some football. We'll get to the Thanksgiving observations here in just a second. But do we have a leader in the clubhouse for game of the year between the Philadelphia Eagles and Buffalo Bills?
Oh, wow. Yeah, right?
Fantastic.
That's got to be one of the games of the year, no question.
I don't know what I'd put ahead of it.
Well, I can't, I walk out of the garage. I can't remember why I walked out there. So, I can't remember.
Trust me, it was the game of the year.
Okay.
To this point.
Okay. It was the game. What made it the game of the year for you?
Well, it was just the back and forth nature, the elements, the terrific play by Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. And ultimately it goes overtime and Buffalo gets the field goal and then Philadelphia answers, and a terrific football game with two great dynamic playmakers in Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. So does this kind of win under these kind of challenges sort of cement the idea with Philadelphia they're the team to beat in the NFC, or do you still have questions?
Yeah, I think, interestingly enough about Philly, like anybody that watched Philly and Kansas City would tell you that Kansas City more lost that game than Philly necessarily went out there and won that game. So I think there were still some question marks. Now, there's still going to be some question marks because the Buffalo Bills, let's face it, we've talked about this since preseason. Something feels wrong in Buffalo. So as good as I think Philly is, and you know how much respect I have for Philly with the way they can dominate a line of scrimmage and all the things that they do well, and I like their quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Love his ability in general, his demeanor, the way he leads his football team. Like, that guy truly doesn't. I truly believe he told me, I'm not worried about being popular or being, I'm not. He's worried about winning football games and doing what he has to do to win football games. I really do appreciate that about him. But doesn't it feel like, okay, as good as that Buffalo win is, as good as that Kansas City win is, we're really going to find out who Philadelphia is when they play San Francisco next week.
Really? You still have questions about Philly?
I don't, but I think America does. I think the general population still looks at Philly and people in Philly look at Philly and they don't like their coordinators. They don't like this. They don't like they have some skepticism about them. Something doesn't feel like it did necessarily last year. So I think this San Francisco game for me really is going, because it's clearly the two best teams in the National Football League, or at least in the NFC, from a roster construction standpoint and the way they're playing. And let's face it, San Francisco had the little lull there in the middle of the season where they weren't, producing pressure on the opponent's quarterback and all this, that, and the other, and lost some of their offensive weapons when, Deebo Samuel went out and Christian McCaffrey got a little banged up. And so I think there is that aspect that a lot of people feel like, at least in my realm or my sphere of analysts and people I know, feel like San Francisco is the best team in the National Football League, not the team with the best record, but the Niners are the best team.
Man, you and the 49ers, you and the Shanahans.
Yep. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah,
wow. I would think most people watching right now would agree with me that this is more about San Francisco proving that they're better than Philadelphia, where as opposed to Philadelphia having to prove that they're better than San Francisco. You do remember San Francisco lost 3 in a row this season.
Why do you hate the Shanahans?
I don't hate the Shanahans. I just can't believe that Philly is the team that has something to prove.
You don't feel
not San Francisco?
You don't feel like more people have, like, there are more questions about Philadelphia than there are about San Francisco?
No.
Now, I'm not talking about fan bases. I'm not talking about,
You're just asking me.
fandoms.
I trust Philadelphia way more than I would trust.
Really?
Well, yeah. So you're
Okay.
telling me you would trust Brock Purdy over Jalen Hurts?
It's not what I said. I talked about don't do that. I'm talking about the team and the way they're constructed and the way they play football.
You've told me repeatedly that you think Philadelphia is built exactly the way you're supposed to build along both lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Philadelphia's built that. I think San Francisco's built that way as well. I'm just telling you, the general population, if you leave the Mountain Time Zone and you go to Philadelphia, the people in Philadelphia feel like
Philly's got more to prove than San Francisco.
I think there is a lot. I think there are a lot of people that question kind of exactly how good this. What's their record right now? 10-1.
So Philly, who went to the Super Bowl, lost a hard-fought Super Bowl, and has a better record than San Francisco this year.
Yes.
Hasn't lost 3 in a row this season like the 49ers did at one point.
They lost one to the Jets. And who was quarterbacking the Jets?
They lost one game.
Zach Wilson.
I don't care. They lost one game. And yet you believe Philly has to show that they belong, not San Francisco.
I don't.
What do you all think?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I don't believe that Philly has more to show. I feel like that's how the general population feels about their record now.
All right.
Maybe it's just my tete-a-tete with the some of those in the Philadelphia media.
Yeah, I think that might be more of a Shanahan thing, but okay, I digress.
Okay, but
meanwhile,
I do have a lot of respect for
you
the
do,
Shanahans.
you do, and you should, and I do too. As much as you try to paint me as a Shanahan hater, is it fair to say? Let me pose this question to you: is there another player in the NFL who carries more weight on his shoulders to carry his team like Josh Allen in Buffalo?
No, it is the job. I mean, he had like 339 yards passing. He had over 80 yards rushing in that game. I think 9 carries. And here's the point: is this, Mike? For me, when it comes to having that much on that quarterback's plate, like that dude plays the entirety of the game on the high dive. You ever climb up the ladder to the high dive?
Terrifying.
Yeah, it is terrifying, but there's some excitement to it, right? And you feel like, man, I'm gonna steel my nerves, and this is gonna be great, and I'm just gonna, and then you get up there on that thing, and I don't know how high the high dive is, maybe 12 feet, whatever it is, but when you're standing looking down at the water, you might as well be 100 feet above. Like it's terrifying. It's huge, and you have to play the entirety of the game where everything is on you. From the motions to the calling plays to getting out of a bad play to, the check with me and kill it package to, hey, you're going to throw it 50 times or 44 times or whatever you're going to throw it. And, hey, by the way, we're going to have 8 designed QB runs for you as well. And when we get in the red zone, you're going to be our number 1 run target. And there is just a shit ton on his plate. And there comes a time, and I've talked to a ton of offensive coordinators about this, is that from Sean Payton to a bunch of other guys that I've talked about this, there has to be kind of what they call breather plays for a quarterback. Hey, man, this is call it, run it, turn around, hand it off. And you don't have to change the formation or put somebody in motion. We're just going to line up in a static formation. We're not going to shift and motion. You're not going to be in charge of a lot. And we're just going to hand this ball off and take something off your plate for a play or 2 or 3. Is there anybody who has more food piled on a cheap plate than Josh Allen? And my answer to you would be, I don't think so.
Do you get any sense that he brings that upon himself? That they'd like to give him more help, but he just says, I got this.
Oh, well, everybody says I got it.
But does he do it because of his ability to throw and run? Well, does he take on too much by himself?
Well, sure he
does.
By
choice.
Well, everybody wants to be the alpha. Everybody wants to go. You don't get to the NFL and playing by going. No, it's like you ever seen anybody like when you were playing as a kid, and you were playing like you were throwing the ball and you were the quarterback and then you were catching the ball, whatever, right? Or you're shooting and you count down everybody counts down the clock. It goes 5, 4, 3, 2. You always took the last shot, right?
Sure.
You didn't go 5, 4, 3, 2. Pass it to Mello. right? As a kid, you took that last shot.
Sure.
Right? You nailed it.
Sure.
Wow.
Swish. Yes.
Right. So everybody, you don't get the NFL by going, well, no, I'd rather not.
Right.
Not. So then it becomes the coaches. This is why, in my opinion, if this Buffalo Bills team doesn't find their way into the playoffs, Mike, Sean McDermott's on the hot seat.
Oh, I think he's more than on the hot seat. He's gone.
You think he's gone?
If they miss the playoffs, yeah.
If they miss the playoffs.
If they miss the playoffs, he's fired, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
Knowing how the NFL works, and we'll get to more examples of it here in a minute.
Expectations.
Yeah.
You had expectations.
Super Bowl expectations.
Yeah, Super Bowl or
not
bust
not just squeeze into the playoffs expectations.
Right. What are they right now? 6 and 5?
6 and 6.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, whatever they are, they had legit and they just lost back-to-back games. One to Denver and Denver at home.
6 and 6.
6 and 6. So the Denver Broncos just usurped you on the record.
Yes.
Well, 6 and 6. They've played 12. You're 6 and 5.
Lost column.
Lost column. You know the lost column.
I love talking about the lost column.
You do love the lost column.
I've educated you on the lost column.
Oh, it's important. You have told me many, many times.
So let's go back to Thanksgiving and what we watched over Thanksgiving. I watched Thanksgiving and then Black Friday, the games. Am I wrong in saying that Dallas and Miami are mirror images of themselves? That there's one team, Miami, hanging on the AFC. There's Dallas hanging on the NFC, and when they look across, they see each other like identical images.
Like how so?
Just teams that look so good in beating up on bad teams. But the question is, what happens when they play the Iron?
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
they feel like they're mirror images to me.
You know what? That's a great call. Like, you only play the teams on your schedule, right?
Sure.
I get that. But when you play, like, does anybody as good as Dallas is, and they're exceptionally talented, man. Their O-line is really good. They've got their quarterback is playing at a very high level. They've got receivers. They've got Pollard, the running back. I mean, they can do it all. And defensively, man, however good you think, however, I had a coach tell me this about playing Dallas. He goes, he reached out to another coach. I just don't want to use names, but reached out to another coach and said, hey, man, how, give me a little insight into the, to playing the Cowboys. And he goes, however good you think Parsons is, he goes, double it. Like, however good you think that dude is, like, he's way better than you even think he is. And, I mean, he is unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, but still, when they play a good team, I mean, Miami still doesn't have, when they played them, they haven't won a game against a team that had a winning record at the time they played them.
Correct.
Now it's different because the Broncos now have a 6-5 record, but they didn't have a winning. They haven't beaten anybody with a winning record, and I don't know where Dallas is on that.
Well, here you go. Here's who these two teams have beaten.
Right.
The Dolphins have beaten the Patriots twice, the Jets, the Raiders, Carolina, the Giants, the Chargers, and Denver.
Okay.
Dallas has beaten the Giants twice, Washington, Carolina, the Chargers, the Rams, the Patriots, and the Jets.
Yeah, none of those teams have a winning record.
No.
That they've beaten.
No.
So
that's why they're mirror images.
Yeah, it's a great. Do you feel like either of these teams, if you had to pick one of the two teams, who would you think? Okay, you say one has to be a contender.
Question. Yep.
And one has to be a pretender.
I would say Dallas is the contender. Miami's the pretender because I think Dallas is better defensively.
I would agree with you. Micah Parsons and Odighizuwa and Lawrence and the guys they have defensive. Plus, what's the cat's name that has 5 returns?
Bland?
Yeah, Deron Bland.
He's got more touchdowns than
the Jets.
Well, but yeah, he's got. If you take a look at some of the best, highest paid playmakers in football, he's got more touchdowns than.
He's got more interception returns for touchdowns than most receivers have.
Yes. And most top running backs have touchdowns.
Right.
Same thing.
It's craziness.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Is Jordan Love figuring it out? He looked good on.
If
I'm a Packer fan, I'm like, ooh.
I think the Packers are sneaky.
Yeah.
Like, I think the Packers are all of a sudden, the Packers may wind their way back in these playoff discussions in the NFC North. And, the crazy thing is that Thanksgiving Day game, the Lions are all of a sudden, and this happens to teams, but they're scuffling a little bit, right? They barely beat Chicago. They had to come back in the last 4 minutes of that Chicago game to score 2 touchdowns to win that football game. And they did nothing offensively. 3 interceptions by Jared Goff. And, it was an offensive performance that was horrible for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters. And then, you look at that situation. And then, the Packers handled them. They absolutely handled them. So the Packers just seem to have a little mojo going right now. And you're right. I thought Jordan Love was going to have a bit of a breakout season. And I'll go back to last year talking to Aaron Rodgers about him and about how he upped his game in practice and how he practiced. He had this off-platform throw that they were raving about where he kind of goes sidearm between 2 defenders and it puts it right between like the ones of the receiver, and they're like, whoa, what a and it was an amazing throw. And how Aaron had this conversation with him, like, dude, you got to cut our defense up, man. And you got to work on that. Like, that stuff, that's where you work on becoming comfortable throwing it sidearm and around people and through people and, like, make it your personal mission to shove it up that defense's ass every day in practice. That's how you get good at playing quarterback in this league. And to his credit, he took that advice and he ran with it. And I'm with you, man. All of a sudden, the Packers look like, watch out. Like, they're a team that people don't want to line up against right now.
And they got a lot of young players around him. That's an offense that if you're a Packers fan, you're like, hey, I can really enjoy watching this offense grow together with the young receivers, the young tight ends. I was very impressed with them on Thanksgiving Day. They looked they're looking like one of those teams, if they can sneak into the playoffs, oof, dangerous.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
I'm with you 100%. I'm with you.
Dangerous. Speaking of sneaking into the playoffs, the Broncos, your Broncos, left for dead at 1-5, gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins, and we're wondering, boy, is Sean Payton did he forget how to coach in the year that he took off? Russell Wilson, is he washed? All of that. Now here they are, 6-5, absolutely knee deep in the playoff hunt. How has Sean Payton done this?
It's amazing, right? Win 5 straight games after a 1-5 start. You mentioned that game against Miami was probably one of the low points in Broncos history.
Oh, easily.
It was
easily.
It was a butt whipping. And it was interesting in the broadcast this weekend, Vance Joseph talking to the production crew, talking about how we haven't forgotten that. Like that is a rallying cry to, hey man, if we're not on our P's and Q's, I'm not even sure what P's and Q's are, by the way.
We had this discussion
Pints
once.
and quarts or
I
something
think
like that?
it is something like that.
Yeah.
It's old.
Right. It's as old as the hills. Like, you want a pint or you want a quart?
I think it's something like
It
that.
has to do with drinking
Yeah.
beer, I think. Ale.
Probably.
Ale.
Had to be ale. A
Yeah.
tankard of ale.
Yes. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. If you don't pay attention to what's going on, you are going to get, you're going to get throttled. We're not good enough to just show up. We've got to be on point at all times. And, and it's one of those rallying cries. I was mentioning this to you earlier, and not to bring past history back into it, my past history, but I am my favorite topic.
You hate talking about yourself.
So I'm going to go ahead and go with
So
what
shy.
with what I know, and that's me. Losing a playoff game in 1996, the Broncos being a number 1 seed and losing that playoff game was seriously the catalytic event that drove us to back-to-back championships. I mean, we get in a game in the middle of the third quarter going, hey, don't let that Jacksonville thing happen again. Come on, let's roll. Hey, I don't want to come in and meet with these damn coaches. I don't want to have anything to do with these guys on Mondays, because we get Mondays without having to meet with the coach if you won. Right. So, I mean, there was these things that were really – that game was really a driving force in winning back-to-back championships. And that game against Miami, where you got beat 70-20, is probably, or has been, a driving force for this Broncos team to say, hey, nobody believes in us. And as long as we believe in ourselves and take care of our business, we got a chance. For them to do what they've done, and a lot of it, like Sean Payton, I'll give him a ton of credit. Here's what we are, but more importantly, here's what we're not. And we're going to play to what we are, and we're going to mitigate all the things that we're not. We're not going to put ourselves in those positions. They're running the ball. They're controlling the time of possession. And I'm going to do something that I probably haven't done on this podcast in a year. I'm going to praise Russell Wilson, because as cringeworthy as he can be at times, right, and as cliche as he can be at times, and he's all those things, and that's just kind of who he is, his unselfishness playing the quarterback position is one of the reasons the Broncos have won 5 straight games. You can shelf all this let Russ cook stuff, because obviously what went down last year, that didn't work. But the bottom line is this with Russ. He is dumping it off to the backs. He is not taking sacks. They are running it far more than they're throwing it. They're limiting his opportunities to drop back. They've got the quick passing game with bubble screens and with swing passes and screens and all the things they're doing out of the backfield. And then occasionally it's, hey, man, when things break down and the first read isn't open, scramble around and make a play for us. And it's exactly what Russ was great at in Seattle, the way he won a ton of close games in Seattle. That's how they did it. And it's basically taking that blueprint and saying, Russ, this is how we're going to win. And him being able to go, all right, I'm okay with that. 134 yards. I think he was 13 of 20-something. I mean, it's the blueprint for how you win football games when your roster maybe isn't necessarily constructed exactly the way you want it to be constructed.
But is it the long-term answer there in Denver? Because his story is fascinating, because he is playing much better than he did last year.
Mm-hmm.
They're winning, and yet his contract looms over all this. Because for those who aren't familiar with Russ's contract, if they move on from it after this season, they can spread out the cap hit, which is a massive cap hit.
Right.
I think $85 million, but they can spread it out over 2 years. But here's the problem. If they bring him back for next year,
right,
his salary for 2025 automatically becomes guaranteed. So he's playing well, but is he playing well enough to justify a 2-year commitment
right,
at close to what, $100 million?
Yeah. Could you sit there and say, hey, listen, based on running the football and getting, 35 carries a game from our running backs or 30 carries a game from our running backs and another 4 or 5 designed runs from our quarterback and dominating the line of scrimmage and throwing swing passes and bubble screens and, little hitch routes and the boot keep game and all that kind of stuff and having a couple quarterback design runs, could we get the same type of production from a rookie that we think has a higher ceiling and essentially, will still be having that huge salary at the quarterback position, but by the time that comes off our books, our rookie quarterback is still under his rookie contract.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, theoretically, we can build around that guy and create a better offensive kind of personnel.
But then again, are you watching Russell Wilson right now? Does he look like the Russell Wilson that you covered in Seattle?
Yeah.
Well, then that's the guy the Broncos traded for, gave up first-round picks, and gave a $250 million contract to. So if that's the case, then they should be happy to move on with him for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's interesting is how will the offense evolve? How will he grow? Like how will Sean Payton create opportunities for that growth process? Still knowing, hey man, there's certain things that every player, and this is not me bagging on Russ. Every player, myself included, there are things that we don't do well. I know the things I don't do well, right? And I try to keep myself out of those positions as a player. And every player has a few things that they don't necessarily do well, and that's the coach's. That's your job as a player to recognize that in yourself. And it's the coach's job to make sure that hey, these are the things we're not going to do. I'm not putting you in this position.
Final thought. We watched the Chiefs finally kind of figure some things out, scoring in the second half. 17 second-half points for a team that's been the worst second-half offense in the NFL. It's mind-blowing to say. Did Patrick Mahomes figure something out? Is he starting to get comfortable with who he's throwing to, and that's good news for the Chiefs and bad news for the rest of the NFL?
Well, I will say this. What's the kid's name? Rice.
Rasheed Rice.
He had 8 catches in that game, and we have over 100 yards receiving, and we have talked about, ad nauseum nationally and locally, anywhere you're at, they got to have somebody else other than Travis Kelce. And all of a sudden, if they can get that development, take some pressure off a couple of the other receivers and have, their running backs get involved in, like Isaiah Pacheco and all those in the passing game, just to take the pressure off of Travis Kelce and off of, Patrick Mahomes, then all of a sudden, with what they've built on the defensive side of the ball, and we talked about this, like there's this. And this is the most chiefy thing ever, right? Like last year, they were developing a bunch of young kids. They at some points when they were playing dime, they had 7 rookies on the football field for them defensively, and they kept grooming those kids, and those kids kept getting better and better. And by the time they hit the Super Bowl, man, that defense was legit. That defense has been pretty much legit all year, as they're figuring out who's going to step up at the receiver position to give us an opportunity to be special. And if this Rice kid is all of a sudden developing into that guy, man, I'll tell you what, good things going to happen with the Chiefs, right? Which is just like eating a turd sandwich, having to say that.
That's tough for you, isn't it?
Man, I hate that. Yep.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like, it's true. Like, the Chiefs are still that team, They're still the team probably to beat in the AFC, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If only they had a chance to play San Francisco to find out how good they really are.
It's a good call. That's a good – San Francisco kicked their ass. Anyhow. Hey, by the way, make sure you stay tuned because we've got the Leftovers podcast. I did the game, scintillating matchup between the Tennessee Titans and the Carolina Panthers. Well, this morning, breaking news, Carolina Panthers head coach on Monday morning, Frank Reich got fired by Dave Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers. And we're going to break down those two teams kind of after the game off of my boards and some of the stuff maybe that I got to, or maybe some of the stuff I'd like to get a little deeper in the Leftovers podcast. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. For everybody involved in the Stinkin' Truth podcast, for Mike, I am Mark. We thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe. Send us a note. We appreciate you, and we'll be back later on this week. Hey, for everybody involved in the Stinkin' Truth, we thank you so much. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more content just like this. If you want to see more of our videos, you can also be sure to check out our playlist. Let us know exactly what you think in the comments below. We appreciate you guys so much for being a part of that.
Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.